All right. Well, tell us your story, marathon. You can focus on the marathon swimming part of it, but I want to hear any story you're willing to tell me.
All right, well, let's stick to swimming. So, yeah, I've done a few marathon swims, but I didn't get into marathon swimming to marathon swim or to get in shape or any of that kind of stuff. What happened is that from the time I was a little kid, I always wanted to swim the English Channel. And I can't tell you where it came from. I can't tell you if it was because somebody, swam it and I, read about it in the paper or heard it on the radio or saw it in the news or whatever. But from the time I was like 8 or 9 years old, even before I knew how to swim, I wanted to swim the English Channel. And then, growing up in San Francisco Bay Area, right, I swam at Aquatic Park when I was 16 years old. I even did Alcatraz when I was 16.
Wow.
But did masters off and on, that kind of stuff, but never really focused on the marathon swimming stuff until I was 2 months before my 50th birthday. And I was like, holy guacamole, Batman, I'm running out of time. So I better get to it. And it took me, 4 years to get it done. And it was lots of trials and tribulations and pain along the way. But I got it done. So it was, anyway, so it was all worth it. So that's how I ended up in marathon swimming. And once I did that, it's pretty hard to stop doing marathon swims at that point because of the community. I just, I was in better shape at 54 than I was at 44. And I felt like I was getting a lot more out of life just by being in better shape and being more mobile and more active and all that kind of stuff. But it's a great community to be a part of. And so, for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, I never want to leave the community. So not leaving the community, right? I have to keep swimming. So
you're forced to.
Right, I'm forced to twist my arm. But the reality is, right, from an emotional perspective, I could probably stop swimming at any time. I'm not one of those people that gets, I read everybody's, Facebook posts, and so many people just get joy from swimming. And I like the outcomes and I like the results, but usually during a marathon swim, I think I'm the world's dumbest person when I'm doing it, and I absolutely hate it, and it's torturous. The feeling at the end when you finish is fabulous, but during the swim itself, it's just really, it's like I feel like I failed the IQ test. What am I doing here? So
I can relate to what you're saying. A lot. I think I'm very outcome driven myself, and people talk about just loving the process and swimming every day, and I'm like, okay, trying to get my head around that.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. I'd much rather be, but anyway, never mind.
Well, tell us what drives you to those outcomes then. I mean, tell me about that. Like, what is that feeling really like at the end of a marathon swim? What is that like?
It's almost impossible for me to describe. I don't know how to describe it, but there's an old saying in sales. I used to be a salesperson, and I've managed sales people and all that. And sales provides the highest highs and the lowest lows. When you get a sale that you've been working on for years and you get it, that's just like you're off the charts on ecstatic, right? And then if you don't do it, if you don't get the sale and you work on it for years, you're just in the dumpster, right? You're just like, you can't get much lower than that. From a work perspective, right? There's much worse things in life than that. But so a marathon swim's like that, right? I mean, when I'm coming to the end and the bottom starts to come up to you, right? It's just an amazing feeling throughout your body. And when you're, and sometimes, right, I'm sure you've experienced this too, right? Sometimes you got to put your foot down too early and it's not quite there yet. It's like, oh, rats, right? And then when your foot finally touches, you're just like, wow, this is awesome, right? And so it's just off the charts. It's just a great sense of accomplishment because, it's the English Channel, like I said, that was 4 years in the making. Everything before that, the marathon swims I did before the English Channel, they were all for the English Channel. But even since, right, it's just, you put so much into these things. It's so much time and energy and money and training and focus and all that to accomplish it is just, it's just off the charts. It's just an emotion like none other that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah. I can Been there too. So yeah.
I'm sure you have, and I'm sure your audience has too. So
right. Yeah. Tell me about a swim that you're the most proud of.
Um, well, there's no doubt. I don't mean to keep talking about it, but it's the English Channel because it was more than a swim. It was really a lifelong dream. It was something that was inside of me that I just always wanted to do, but never really got to. And I had a couple other things I wanted to do in life, a couple other big things, probably bigger than the English Channel. But life throws you a bunch of curveballs, and so those other things didn't get done in my life, and they're not going to get done in my life. So not giving up on the English Channel was a really big deal. And I had no idea whether I could do it or not. And I had no idea where to start. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. There's nobody around that was doing any kind of distance swimming. There's very little even open water swimming, right? There's more now, but when I started, there was none. And so I was learning, and you have to think about you have to think about, this is before the internet. There was a little bit of stuff out there, but the MSF forum didn't even start until like 2012.
Yeah.
Well, it was 2013 when I did the English Channel. So going and finding things and getting information, it was like pulling teeth. It was just hard work. So it was a lot of absolutely lonely time. And not just the swimming, but the research and the self-doubt and the not understanding and not knowing what to do, not having a coach. All that kind of stuff. It was really hard. So the English Channel was by far I'm the most proud of. I also did a swim that nobody had ever done before, at least according to all the research that I'd done. And that was a swim between the islands of St. Thomas and St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I ended up doing a triple of that. And that was pretty cool, being the first one. And the same kind of thing. It was really clear water, especially along the shoreline, and just swimming up, and you just look like the bottom's coming up to you. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do something that's never been done before. And I have to admit that as egotistical as that sounds, it's a really good feeling to do something that hasn't been done before.
I think I think that pioneering spirit, just through all the marathon swimmers I talked to, I think you're coming up on like 47 people that I've talked to since the beginning of April. But like you can feel like that, like there's a drive, even in people who are kind of outcome oriented. They're not like, there's the people that are super into the process and they're going for like the triples and the quadruples of things. But I really feel like there's this like human, like pioneering spirit that we just, we want to be the first one to do something. Cause I don't know. That's one of the things I love about like the support that MSF can provide, and getting that like official documentation. So anyway, it's on my radar too, something that I want to pursue.
Another swim that may not be on your radar that was kind of a pioneering thing. I hate to sound this way, but I did a swim in Brazil, Leme to Pontal in November of last year. And I was the first non-South American, actually, in fact, the first non-Brazilian to actually do it. And I was the oldest person to do it. So those things are kind of cool. It's kind of cool doing those things. At the time I had finished the Triple Crown of the California Triple Crown, I was apparently the oldest to do that too. I think that was eclipsed like a week later, but for a moment I did it. Right? So all those things are exploratory, and for me, I'm so old now that it's exploratory and as much my age as anything else. Right? I'm not a young person in any way, and so I have to be careful in my training. I have to do all kinds of stuff just to survive. So it's anyway. So. So actually, I don't know that there's a swim I'm not proud of, but the more adventurous, the better.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that swim in Brazil, that's like you're the calendar guy. I kind of feel fortunate to talk to you. You're the MSF calendar guy. You're on my refrigerator this month, and here I am talking to you.
Actually, that's actually not from Brazil. That's actually from no. I'm really impressed that MSF included that photo. It just goes to show that they really do value effort and attempts and those kinds of things, because that's actually from a failed swim. That swim is from, you just froze up. Are you still, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
I can.
So you froze it. Okay. So that's actually I don't know what you heard last, but that swim is from a failed swim, and I'm really impressed that it got included in the calendar, because it just goes to show how much they really value the attempt and effort and all, and it's not just about results. And that swim was Rio de Plata, and that's from Uruguay to Argentina across the Rio de Plata. And that was a swim I did. I've actually attempted twice now. The second time was in March of this year, March 4th, but I didn't complete it in that photo that you saw, and I didn't complete it again March 4th. So in the water for 17 hours and got ordered out of the water because it got too rough and it was too dangerous for the people on the boat to be in the water.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was hard, because when you get to a long swim and you can start seeing details on shore, you're like, okay, finally I'm getting visual feedback now. I'm no longer just looking down into gray or looking at the same people on the boat for 17 hours. Now I'm finally getting visual feedback of progress. And so I could actually start to see the individual lights on shore. So I was probably under an hour away, but it was just dangerously rough. And because it was my second attempt, it was emotionally really hard, but it was the right thing to end the swim. It was absolutely, people really were in danger. And so as gut-wrenching as it was the right thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that is gut-wrenching though. My goodness, to be so close.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you haven't finished that you maybe had a learning from that you could share with us?
Yeah, I have lots of bad experiences. But I don't know if you. I'm trying to decide which failure to start with first. It took me 2 tries to do the English Channel. The first time I was a half mile from shore when I got ordered out of the water. And basically, I've had a swim. I've had 2 swims actually where I know I could not have finished. That was not that case that day. I still contend to this day that I could have finished that swim, but there was just giant communication problems. And there's, people underestimate how important it is to be surrounded by the right people and have the right people in your life and on your boat, both figuratively and literally, metaphorically. It was just a mess. What was going on the boat was just a mess. I didn't understand what was going on the boat, but the people on the boat didn't understand what was going on in the water. And anyway, so after so many 12.5 hours and being a half mile from shore, I got ordered out, and I am, somebody who follows orders. I got out. Another swim that I failed at, and I have not gone back to attempt again, was from San Nicolas Island to Santa Barbara Island in Southern California. That was another pioneering thing. I believe that I was the first individual to try to do that. A week later, a relay did it, or they left the island. I can't remember where they swam, actually. I think they went all the way to Catalina. But I believe I was the first person to try a solo off of San Nicolas Island. It's a island 60 miles offshore Southern California, controlled by the Navy. It took, I can't remember, I think it was like 13 or 15 months of effort to get permission to be on shore for half an hour to start the swim. There was 2 different sets of people. You had to get permission from this is not the right title anymore, but like the operations people to make sure there wasn't anything going on militarily on the island at that time. Mm-hmm. And then I had to get permission from the Navy's environmental people to make sure the pinnipeds and all that kind of stuff weren't going to be disturbed or bothered. It was the right time and the right day and, all that kind of stuff. So it just took a ton of coordination. And then, it was a lot of time, a lot of money. It was a 6-hour boat ride. So it was a 6-hour boat ride just to get out there, right? And got there, and I was in the water for like an hour and a half, and my head started spinning. And an hour and a half was nothing. At that time, normal workout was somewhere between 3 and 5 hours. My head started spinning. Literally, my vision just started doing this.
Oh, wow.
And we started in the evening. The sun went down shortly after we took off because I wanted to make sure I could try to land during the day. So I wanted to swim through the night. but it just got worse and worse and worse, and my vision just started going. There was a couple times I rolled over on my back, and the whole sky was just going, and then spinning and correcting, spinning, and so that's an example of a swim I could not have finished. There was nobody else that's stopped that swim. In fact, my stroke rate and all that kind of stuff, people couldn't even really tell what was going on.
Yeah.
People, they were at that point, right? There were people on the boat, my kayaker, they all knew me really well at this point and couldn't understand, what was going on with me. And so when I stopped the swim after 2.5 hours, everybody was shocked. But I tell you, that was a long boat ride back. That was, talking about feeling like you let people down. But anyway, so I've never gone back and done that because all the personnel in the Navy changed and just all the work to go do it. I just, it just wasn't calling my name the same way the Rio de Plata called my name to come back and try it again. And the Rio de Plata is still calling my name. So I will go back to Uruguay again. I will try it a third time, and I will keep going until I get this one. So.
Do you know what it was that happened with your vision? Was it like just kind of seasickness thing?
I still don't know. I saw doctors afterwards and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm allergic to crustaceans, not shellfish, but crustaceans like lobster, crab, crawfish, that kind of stuff, shrimp. And what I noticed the next day is I get stung by jellyfish. It happens. It's just part of this, fun of our sport. And so while I was swimming during that first part, I kept feeling these like little zaps, but not enough to stop me. But then what I noticed the next day is I had little dots, almost like mosquito bites, like all over my body, just everywhere. And so my doctor, thinks it was some kind of allergic reaction, that maybe the plankton was, maybe the things that were stinging me weren't jellyfish. Maybe it was, some kind of larva or whatever. And I talked to other people that said there's just, as much as we know about the ocean, we don't know much about the ocean 60 miles offshore.
Right.
Most of our studies have been really, closer to shore than offshore. I don't know if that's still true, but that's what one expert told me. So, to this day, it's still a mystery. But I admit that day, right, I could not have kept going. And that was just one that should have ended.
Yeah. Interesting. Is there anything that you've learned during a swim that you've been able to carry forward into other swims, whether maybe if you finished it or even if you didn't? There's always, that's what I love about this thing, is every single time I learn something new. And I like to think every single time, I like to think my knowledge reservoir and my emotional strength gets better and better. In any big endeavor, let me back up. So sometimes I do keynote presentations, right? And I do keynote presentations about achieving a boyhood dream. And in those keynote presentations at the end, I almost always get asked, how much of it is mental, how much is physical? And I used to make a joke, well, if you knew how much was mental, it wouldn't be mental, right? If you knew the percentage, right? But so sometimes I get a little bit of a snicker, but most of the time people go, huh? What did he just say? And so that caused me to think more and more about my answer, because I get asked this question every time. And so I realized that thinking about the mental physical divide is just the wrong framing. That really the framing is, there's the physical side. You have to take care of that. That means dealing with the temperature, dealing with, the swimming at night, whatever it is, being able to swim a long way, all that physical stuff. Then there's the knowledge piece, and that's learning how to parallel a boat, learning how to communicate with the boat, learning how to, breathe in a way that you can keep your vision. There's all kinds of knowledge things that you have to learn. And then the hardest thing, the biggest differentiator, is the emotional side. And that's something that I think a lot of people gloss over in everything they do in life. So I don't, take emotions and knowledge and throw it all into my head as one thing. Right? It's just like when you do strength training and you do endurance training, right? With what's going on in your head, there are separate things in your head. There's the knowledge growth, and then there's the emotional thing. And I used to think, I go through dark periods, and I used to think it was because I was such a bad swimmer that I was the only person going through dark periods in these marathon swims. And what I've learned is even the best people go through dark periods. Mm-hmm. And so what I've learned is a couple of things to
talk to myself through it is, first of all, just being aware that I'm going to go through a dark period. So for me, I know that I go through a dark period potentially right before about the halfway mark, and then again around the 3/4 mark, right? Where the pain is just so excruciating and I'm not even halfway yet, or pain is so excruciating. I have 25% left, and that's a marathon swim by itself. I mean, oh my God, you know? And so those are my dark periods. And so what I've learned is to expect them. And so like in the Brazil swim, I intentionally did not feed every half an hour, every 20 minutes. I fed every hour on purpose. So I got beyond that, and I intentionally asked to be told not where I was. So I passed the halfway mark before I knew it. And so that helped, right? That helped manage my emotions. The other thing is now when I feel that, and it's almost like a goblin or a ghoul or whatever coming up from the deeps, coming in, trying to grab me. Well, I have a little phrase I say to myself when he comes to get me. I just say, "Hello, friend." And it sounds silly. You're laughing at me.
No, not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I understand you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. But I found that phrase really helps a lot because I direct it right to that demon. And demons and emotions and those kinds of things, I found they don't like to be recognized. So whether you're talking about marathon swimming or something emotionally hard in life or work or whatever big challenge it is, I've taken these lessons from marathon swimming and applied them to the rest of my life, right? That's what the beauty of sports is. You just learn so much in such condensed periods, and then the lessons you can learn, you can apply to other places. That you do learn, you apply to other places, and that's one of them. And so when dark emotional times come, I say, "Hello, friend." And it worked really well in the Brazil swim. And then you're talking about other lessons. Brazil swim is the same thing. I started throwing up at hour 4 in that swim.
Oh, wow.
And so I had nothing in me. It was it ended up being a 15-hour swim. And I had nothing in me after hour 4. Even like trying to take a little bit of water was just bad news. And so at some point, I can't remember exactly where it is, somewhere around the 75% mark. So, the dark period didn't come, but what came was total physical collapse. And I couldn't swim. Normally, at that point in the swim, I was trying to feed every half an hour, but I couldn't make it every half an hour without a break. And so I really, you hear about marathon runners chunking it out. I really chunked it out. And I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to stop. So what I did is I said, you know what? I'm going to swim 100 strokes. As I would swim 100 strokes, and I'd stop. And because it was along the shoreline, ways from the shoreline, but along the shoreline, I could see the shoreline enough to get bearings. And so I was swimming straight on into a current. There hadn't been that. I think I was number 28, maybe 21 without a wetsuit to ever do this swim. So they just didn't have that much experience with the currents. And so I was swimming head on into a current. So what would happen is I'd swim 100 strokes, I'd stop, and I'd look at shore. And if I could tell I was being pushed backwards, it would only be like a 5-second break, but it'd be a break. But then if I wasn't being pushed backwards, if I was staying stagnant right at that point, like not being moved backward enough to see it visually, from a distance, then I would maybe wait 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. So it was almost like, old training where you say, okay, I'm going to swim this far, take a 10-second break, swim this far, take a 10-second break. And that's what it was. And then all of a sudden, I knew lightning was in the forecast for later that evening. I knew I had a deadline to beat the thing. And then so I could see the clouds forming over the mountain range. And that just like snapped me out of it. And I got a second emotional burst or whatever at that point. And then I was able to swim normally. But I'm not sure how long. It was probably an hour, maybe 2 hours of 100 strokes at a time and stop, 100 strokes at a time and stop. So probably more than you wanted to hear, too much detail. But yeah,
not at all. That's great.
But that's what I had to do to finish that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like your divide of the emotional versus knowledge. I've always just called it kind of mental preparation and coaching and
Right.
talking to people, but you're right. It really does come down to emotional
Right.
preparation
It is,
and knowledge and
just,
preparation.
right, and I really I throw the word mental out, right?
Yeah.
So what I use with my business clients now, right? Because my business goes through the same thing. It's PKE, right? It's physical, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about in the business world, physically, right, people can do the business jobs, right? Knowledge, lots of people have MBAs and that kind of stuff. A lot of people have the knowledge. The difference of great leaders in business is their emotional controls
Yeah.
over themselves, their influence of others, their sensitivity to others. It's all around emotions. And when you're planning something, whether it's a marathon swim or business, you got to have a plan to deal with your physical side. You got to deal with your knowledge. How do you reserve a boat? How do you book a captain? How do you sign up for this? So all those knowledge things matter, right?
Create a crew, right? All that
Create a crew.
stuff.
How do you pick a team, right? All that stuff, right? And then the emotional side just gets really underlooked. But I train in a way that I like to think improves my emotional strength all the time. And that's really important to have a plan for your emotional side too.
Yeah. No, it's I like that breakdown. That's fantastic. How do you get through those really hard parts? You kind of talked about it. So yeah, I'm kind of feeling like you maybe got into that a little bit, but tell us any other hard situations you've had to deal with and get through.
Well, it's emotional, and I like to. I work out alone. I don't. Again, I'm so isolated where I am. I'm not really part of a daily or weekly or monthly community. My community happens when conversations like this. My community happens, electronically. My community happens when I go do a swim. I love meeting people all over the world that are involved in marathon swimming. The commonalities are amazing, right? The drive, the character, all that is just, it's amazing, the similarities, no matter where you go in the world. But a lot of the tough stuff I try to deal with as much as possible in my workouts. And swimming alone is big. So like if I do any workouts short, just one example, any shorter than 3 hours, I won't feed. I won't take any water. I won't take any feed. I won't do anything because I think that makes me emotionally harder. Probably helps me physically too, but I think it makes me emotionally harder because then when I go do a swim, right, then it's like, oh, I'm feeding every half an hour. This is awesome, right? So I'm managing my emotions that way. I don't listen to music. I watch the clock a lot. My sets are intentionally boring. Like if I'm in a short course pool, I'm doing hundreds. Not very fast. I'm doing hundreds on the 140. So that's 36 100s per hour. That's just what I do. And I just do it over and over. If I have 2 hours, I'm doing 72 100s. So that's just what I do. When I'm in a long course pool, I'm just swimming nonstop and I'm watching the pace clock. When I come off the wall at the 100, I'm looking up at the pace clock to make sure I'm keeping my pace. But I just go nonstop. I don't talk. I don't chit chat. I don't do anything. I don't have MP3 player or anything because emotionally, right? You've got to be real comfortable inside your own head.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's where I try to do most of the hard stuff actually in workouts. By the time I get to the swim, at least the first half of the swim is relatively easy, right? So I believe too that swimming in your workouts, it doesn't. This is going to sound, I'm not an authority. I'll just tell you what works for me. I don't believe that swimming 5K a day gets you ready for a marathon swim. What I believe is if you swim 3 or 4 times a week and you do 10K or longer in those 3 or 4 times a week, that better prepares you for a marathon swim. Because for me personally, I go through pain threshold around 3 or 4K and I go through another pain threshold around 7 or 8K. And you've got to work through those pain thresholds in order to get you ready for a marathon swim. And if you don't do that, right, you hit 7, 8K and, you're feeling pain that you're not used to feeling.
Right.
It's hard. It's emotionally hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what you're saying too about the boring workouts because I find myself in the spring usually is when I'm starting to build distance for whatever's going on that summer, and that's there's only where I live. There's only like one other person that'll even attempt to swim with me, and he's always like, "Okay, what are we doing today?" And I'm like, "I was just gonna do I'll even do thousands. Like I'll just do 4 1,000, try to get 4 1,000." He's like, "What?" I'm like, well, you don't have to swim with me. This is what I'm gonna do. Just trying to put in the yards. But anyway.
Absolutely. But I contend that those workouts, they're not just physical, Shannon.
No,
What you're doing is you're making yourself emotionally tougher, right? Yeah. Being comfortable inside your own head.
Yeah, exactly.
Think of all the dialogue you've had in your own head during those
Exactly. Some people need to get that dialogue too. How do you convince them that they need to spend some time in their head?
Okay. I didn't know we were going to get into politics.
We'll just leave that one there. How about your swimming technique? Has it changed at all as you've evolved as you've become a marathon swimmer?
Yes. I've always had a lousy stroke. So yeah, I think it's dramatically different. I mean, I intentionally have a high recovery because I end up swimming in water that seems to be choppy all the time. And if you do that elbow, high elbow, drag your fingertip thing, you're just going to end up plowing your hand into the water. It doesn't help you. My turnover is incredibly slow. And, my normal turnover is like 58 strokes per minute. But I really, I try my best to go as far as I can per stroke. And, I wasn't always that way. I was, when I did swim, I was an IMer, a little bit of a butterflyer. So yeah, this is a completely different kind of swimming. And I, because we all have work and life and family and limited time, I can't even tell you the last time I've done a lap of butterfly, right? Anytime I get in the water, it's those workouts that I just told you about. And it's been that way for 11 years now. So, anyway, so yeah, it's changed a lot. I had a friend of mine that I knew from high school that helped crew in my Gibraltar swim. He's like, you're not even the same swimmer anymore. Your stroke doesn't look anything like it did back in high school. Yeah. So yeah.
That's inevitable, I think. Change is inevitable. How's the quarantine been for you? We're not in quarantine anymore. How's the pandemic been for you this year so far?
That's an interesting question. I actually, I think in a lot of ways, marathon swimmers are better equipped to deal with this.
That's why this whole thing started.
Oh, you started it? You did this?
No, I was just trying to. I feel like there's knowledge that can be gained from marathon swimmers for like pandemic people the world round. I'm hoping I'll catch on to marathon swim stories because we're giving them tips to get through life. That's
a great point because I really believe that we are better equipped because of what we just talked about a few moments ago. That is, we have to spend a lot of time in our own head. We have to be very comfortable who we are. And, as much as you've had entertaining people on this show, they all have to be a little bit introverted, right? and I'm perfectly happy swimming alone. I'm perfectly happy swimming with a group if it happens. It just never happens. But I'm perfectly happy reading a book or studying or going and learning something I haven't learned. And I really, as soon as it looked like it was going to go on, again, I have younger kids. I'm old, but I have younger kids. I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. As soon as this happened, I started like, what can I do with my kids so that they see this as not just a missed water polo, missed swimming, missed gymnastics, missed dance, missed, all baseball, missing all these things that they normally do. What can I do to make this better? And so they're spending more time learning Spanish. My son is going through a scuba course, that he can do online. Patty has a great scuba course. You can do online remotely. So I'm trying to do things like that. And so I try to apply the same thing with myself. I'm working on longer projects because my commute time now is I actually love the fact that I think I've worn shoes once since March, right? I mean, that's not bad for a swimmer, right? And for us. And, so actually, and I like to drive when I have a new destination or I'm going somewhere far. But if I'm just like doing normal driving around, so all that's gone. So I actually have more time in my day than I normally do. And so in a lot of ways, I mean, I hate to say I enjoyed the pandemic, but it hasn't been bad. It really hasn't been bad. And it's been tough for my kids because they missed their summer league swimming that they love so much. And they were both positioned to have great years this year in their summer league. And that's sad because that's something they'll never get back. Like 11-year-old would have been top of the age group at 10 and under. My 8-year-old would have been an 8-year-old. They both were positioned to do really well in in the league. And I'll never get that back. So it sounds selfish for me to say, but you know what? We've spent a ton of time down here in North Carolina on the Outer Banks. So they've had a pretty good summer too, all things considering. I mean, they've been boogie boarding a ton more. They've read more. They've just done a lot of things, and it's hard for them though. But for me, it hasn't been bad. As selfish as that sounds.
No, my kids are little. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. They're almost 4 and 6. And
right.
I kind of feel like they're at that. My 6-year-old, you can tell he like really kind of misses his friends. The 3-year-old is perfectly happy with just like we're his world. It's like his big brother and me, we're his world, and he's totally just anyway. But I empathize with the people that have older kids because that socialization, I'm like that's so.
It's
hard.
really that is by far the hardest thing on my kids. They're both very social. And I know they miss their friends a ton, and they miss the interaction a ton. Swim, like I said, swim team, baseball, everything.
Yeah, that's tough. Switching tacks a little bit, we'll just do a couple more questions. I'll let you get back to your day. But how about inclusion? How do you think we can include more people in marathon swimming?
Well, I think I had to wait 4 years to get my slot and cook straight. So I think the sport's growing tremendously.
It is, yeah.
I think, I don't know that I have a good answer, but I think it starts, it doesn't start with marathon swimming. I think it starts in our communities when people are younger. I think looking for, I might actually cry when I tell the story. I'm going to tell a story. All right.
You're gonna make me cry.
I hope not. So when I swam the English Channel, they did a front page story about me in the Philadelphia paper, like the main paper, front page story. They told me it was coming. I thought it was going to be in the sports section or the health section or something. Right. I go to in Philadelphia, they published the Sunday version on Saturday, and they published a second version on Sunday. And, basically the same paper, but they've upgraded it or changed it and all that. And so I went to the store on Saturday, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on the front page, above the fold, right? It was President Obama, it was the Eagles, it was Miss America, and it was some other big thing, and me. Right? And I was above all of them. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so I bought like 20 papers. I admit, right? I bought a bunch. And then, and I might have been 10 or whatever, but I bought a bunch. And then when my family and friends found out about it, right? My California family and friends, all that. And so they're like, oh, you have to send me one, So I went back on Sunday and bought more, right? Same newspaper, basically, I bought a bunch more. And then so, a couple days later, I started sorting them. I'm not going to swim the whole Sunday paper. I'm just like taking the front section and sorting it out. And in the Philadelphia paper, it was the front page, and the next section is a regional section. And the top story in the regional section is an African-American father and son who drowned. The son went into a river and was struggling. Father went in after him, and he drowned as well. All right. So here I am in my garage sorting these papers, all full of myself. And then I see these people die. Right? And that's not the worst part. That was Saturday's paper. By Sunday's paper, I'm still on the front page. They had a different top story on the regional section for Sunday. So these people were like gone already. So I'm a believer in teaching everybody how to swim at all. More than that, though, we need to teach people how to float. If we can just teach people how to float in any circumstance, no matter what, we would save a ton of lives. And if we teach people how to float, then they'll learn how to swim. And if they learn how to swim, a certain number of those will end up being really good swimmers, and a certain number of those will end up being marathon swimmers. And so I don't see a short-term fast answer. Because the reality is you need a pipeline. Reality is this is not a cheap sport. Reality is the sport is, it takes a lot of time and energy, access to pools and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I have challenges getting access to pools, especially during this pandemic. But it's even, it's much worse for others than it is for me. But you've got to start young. You got to start with floating, and you have to start with pool access. Yeah. And that's not a quick answer. I know it's a cultural thing, but it's not a. I want to be careful not saying anything politically incorrect, but it's an access thing. There's no reason why everybody. And I have taught and when I was younger, I taught African Americans how to float. It's possible for everybody to learn how to float.
Everyone should be still in the water, yeah. And I just talk about it as being still in the water. I teach kids lessons, and yeah. Well, even with adults, I'm just like, you have to be still in the water. Like, how else do you learn to? I mean, otherwise you're going to be struggling, and if you're struggling, you're going to go under. So,
your muscles get all tight in your history. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you have to learn to be still in the water, and then learning to swim should come from that. But yeah, I love that.
So anyway, so I hope I didn't make you cry, but I almost did. And believe me, in my garage when I saw those newspapers, the tears were running down.
Gosh, so that's. My heart goes out to those people. My goodness.
Those people. Yeah, not me. But.
Yeah. How about advice for aspiring marathon swimmers? What would you tell somebody new to the sport?
It's really hard. And it's really complex. I mean, I think a lot of people think it's just a matter of, I get, because I'm unusual in my area. If anybody's ever thinking about doing a marathon swim, they seek me out. Right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I've been in the newspaper a couple of times, that kind of stuff. So people anyway, it's long, too many tangents, but people seek me out. And so I think a lot of people think it's just a matter of swimming a long way. Like, if I could just swim a long way, that's it. And it's not that. I mean, I go back to the PKE is really important, right? Having a plan to strengthen your self physically. You have to have a plan to grow your knowledge, and you have to plan to grow emotionally, right? You have to get stronger emotionally. So all those things matter. But then also having the right support in your life, having the right people in your life matters a lot. I mean, I have younger kids. I mean, if I didn't have the family support that I have, I wouldn't. I mean, when I was in Argentina in March, I was there for 2 weeks. Uruguay in Argentina, I was there for 2 weeks. I couldn't do that without help and support. So you absolutely need the right people in your life and the right people on the boat. Never underestimate what goes on the boat. And it's really critical to have the right people there. I think those are probably the biggest lessons. Those are the biggest things.
Those are good ones. Really good ones. What marathon swimmer has inspired you?
Probably my bet is that most people say Sarah Thomas because she's so incredible. But quite frankly, she's in such a different league that she creates awe, but I'm not sure she really inspires me. Right? Because I'm never going to do 4 links of the English Channel. It's not happening. Right? So I think some of the thing that matters, I think, most in life is tenacity. Right, just to keep working even when you have challenges and adversity in front of you. So, Jackie Corbell has spent 28 hours in the English Channel to complete a one-way. That's pretty inspiring to me. Otto Fanning, who I think for 21 years, it was at least 20 years, he had the fastest time in the English Channel for anyone over the age of 50. And then he went back when he was 73 and became the oldest person to do the English Channel. He's from South Africa. He's really inspiring. So it's more people like that. And then it's also people that aren't necessarily good swimmers. I better be careful. They weren't collegiate swimmers, right? They came to this even later in life. They weren't, your natural, right? Those people, they go through so much to accomplish what they have to accomplish. Those are the people that inspire me, right? Yeah. Because they just, their road is steeper, right? And I'm not taking anything away from great swimmers. Don't misunderstand, but the people that struggle and overcome and keep driving and keep going until they succeed, those are the people that inspire me. And can you imagine spending 28 hours in the English Channel for a one-way? Imagine what that takes. Right?
Yeah.
And I've never met either one of those two people that I mentioned. I've never met either one, so I don't know them. So I'm a fan from afar, but it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love the late onset stories too that go on to, like it's just amazing to me that someone, because I think people like that, they look at a person who's a swimmer all their life and they're like, sure, all you had to do was just like go keep swimming. Whereas for me, I had to figure out how to swim. So,
Right.
So yeah, I admire the late onset swimmers or people that come over from other sports. And I don't know but that's a big part of what I want to accomplish with Marathon Swim Stories too, is that help people know that not everybody is a lifelong swimmer. A lot of us are. I myself am as well. But I love getting the stories of people who've just decided they wanted to swim a really long way whenever they decided to do it,
Right.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Anthony.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I'll send you a link when it's up. I hope you'll feel free to share it.
I will. Absolutely.